I'm very pleased being here, and I also have just learned something more about Montenegro. I haven't known that the Red Cross, for the first time in the region, was present here. It is something important, not only for Montenegro, but also for all of us in the region. And then I have seen in the museum so successful modern Montenegrin women in the past. And let me tell you then, when I'm saying that really real changes in the world could start with a woman at the top of the United Nations, now I would say now whenever I quote what Virginia Woolf said, searching for her own room, or what Simone de Beauvoir said, I will add Montenegrin women, inspiring. My host has already said that the Montenegrin citizens are tired from waiting the right momentum. Could you imagine? What about us? We are tired of endless marathon. And it is not just a marathon. It is marathon with obstacles. Imagine, we have been given candidate status in 2005. Many times we were promoted as leaders. Sometimes one of two of them, like in 2019, when all members of EU supported us after Prespa agreement to start negotiations. And then the President of France, Mr. Macron, said, in my opinion, it is better to go hand by hand with Albania, or shortly he said, both or none. Why? Because then Holland and Denmark were against that, two of us to continue the path. And after that, now, one. Albania continued with Montenegro, and we are still waiting for Mr. Godot. The main question was related to reforms. Indeed, I am teaching my students for maybe 35 or more years about, not only about comparative constitutional law, but also about European constitutional law as inspiring, as philosophy, not only political and administrative machinery, polity based on values and principles. That is what is inspiring, because the politicians at the top positions in EU are changing, but the values and principles are sustained. And imagine now, yes, let's go towards reform, but we are reforming the only thing, changing the constitution. Imagine, British scientists, colleagues of mine, say that their constitution is changing. Constitution, no, our constitution is changing. Imagine 36 amendments, most of them imposed by state builders, treating us as stakeholders. And so could we use our energy to real reforms, because real reforms are connected to Copenhagen criteria, are based on rule of law, on separation of powers, on liberal economy, but not on constitutional changes. If the constitutional changes were the right reform, then at the moment we could be the leader, not here, but in EU. So, we are tired. I'm speaking about imposed constitutional changes. Let me just quote one of them. In the Prespa agreement, by which we changed the name. Nobody in the history changed the name, only in some colonial states. And after establishment of United Nations, they brought back their names. We changed the name. But let me tell you what the question on referendum was. Are you for EU and NATO by accepting the agreement? What it means for a lawyer? It means that those included in this process are for EU, for us, as a member of EU and EU, and NATO, and now they accept us. And where are we now? Again, before another constitutional change. But let me remind you something. There is Article 4 in the agreement on EU that says that EU will respect, Article 4, also political and constitutional structures. Then, there is preamble of EU, alinea 6, saying that EU will respect the national identity, the cultural identity, the history and the language. There are many, many similar articles in the EU documents. And now we have to change the constitution, and the demand is to put our neighbor, Bulgarians, in our preamble in which we have the notion and others. And others, because we have mentioned there what we have been mentioning from the 1946, autochthonous minorities, but also those in considerable number. In my opinion, yes, you are right. We could focus to changes, to reforms, if we are given a chance really not to lose time to problems of our neighbors related to history, culture, and identity. I mentioned Prespa agreement. Just let me to quote something. There is Article 7 in the Prespa agreement that says, the name Macedonia for the second party, nameless party, means territory, people with own history, culture, and language. What are we speaking now with Bulgaria in so-called historical commissions about history, culture, and language? Yes, I very much respect similar, maybe, talks between France and Germany, between Poland and Germany, but they were discussing what to see the opinion on the other, perception of the other, not to order the other to change the constitution. So, yes, it is very interesting. Sometimes we've been evaluated with good progress, limited progress, some progress, but don't forget, during the game, I don't know how many times the EU has changed the rules. And now there is another criteria, very important, known as political readiness or political maturity to overcome the political divisions in the country, but also in the region. And when they evaluate us in 6 clusters, actually they evaluate us through the lens of this also criteria. That is what has to be changed, not because of us, because of all other. Because if we are losing time to frustrations caused by veto is not a peace instrument. Imagine. I used to say, try to be a little bit Scandinavians, because Norway, Sweden, and Finland were so supportive to Baltic states. Also, the colleague of mine has already mentioned, let me mention, when Romania and Bulgaria were on agenda, what's happened? There were serious remarks to corruption and crime, but then the conclusion was, well done. Let's allow them to enter the union, because then they will also overcome the problems in easier way. Because when you are inside, you are inspired by the Copenhagen criteria, because I very much appreciate that most of the citizens of member countries evaluate highly or higher the democracy within the EU than in own states. So please, let us chance to start with negotiations. EU is very innovative and creative, can find solution how to overcome the problem. But my last and the most important notion. I was a member of the Venice Commission, not a Venetian merchant, but fighter against the role of man, not Shylock, but devoted to Venice Commission. And Venice Commission produces opinions. Please, try to find opinion of the Venice Commission on Macedonian law, on the law on the use of languages. And you will find there what? That the solutions are higher or contain higher standards than European standards. Why it is so? Because in 2001, and you know this well, we again adopted framework agreement. In the preamble of framework agreement, we guaranteed the high standards for the minority, and even we don't use this term minority, but communities. And now the language of those speaking 20% is also official language. There is double majority in the parliament, and etc., and etc. So we are the leader in this. You could compare, because not many constitutions within the EU have notions or articles on this. And yes, then there is also opinion on the constitution of Bulgaria, on the position of minorities. And in the Bulgarian constitution, there is only one article. Article says it is so-called anti-discriminatory clause that says that based on the obligation of equal treatment of persons belonging to national minorities under the Framework Convention, the Commission deems it preferable that the Constitution expressly takes into account the rights of persons rather than to rely on the general rule of non-discrimination. So they recommend Bulgaria to change the constitution guaranteeing minority rights. I'm in confusion. I am in a deep confusion. Who has to change the constitution is my question, if EU is based on values. Maybe it is critical, but please, try these days the United States State Department published the results of the census in Bulgaria from 1956, because this is report from 1965, because until then it was forbidden, it was a classified document. Please see how many Macedonians were in Bulgarian. I am not saying, but the Commissioner Martakos has to know this, because there was so-called Blitz agreement between Yugoslavia and Bulgaria, and by this agreement, Bulgaria guaranteed cultural autonomy to Macedonians there. Several schools were opened, then a library, also 2 places were given names, Janez Sandanski and Goce Delchev, and now there is a possibility in the census and the other just to express. But if you compare the current number to the number from 1956, you will be shocked. And where are they? Where are they? I think that EU needs end to double standards. Also to re-examine the veto. And what colleague of mine said, I think that EU this time is very, very interested in enlargement process, mostly because of the bare fact that we are not speaking just about EU as a competitive factor and actor on the global, unfortunately polarized stage, but because of the need to strengthen resilience toward third factors. And we have always been Europeans, geographically, historically, and culturally. Why not politically? That is my message. So I expect this time to be understood and really to give us chance to reform us, to prove that Homo Balkanicus is Homo Politicus, to support each us as we are doing, because otherwise we are not going towards EU. We are stuck. Thank you.